Well, I don't believe in him like some people believe in him. Believe from a distance. Believe he was a good man. Believe that he's a prophet. No, I believe. I've thrown everything, all my worldly hope and all my eternal hope is on him. I belong to him. I believe in him. That's the belief. That's who we serve. Come on, one more hand. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Amen. You can be seated if you can. If you can't, not going to bother me. I'm going to be standing on you. Thank you again for being here in the house, Lord. Amen. I believe. And I'm glad I belong to him. Glad I belong to him. I'm glad I don't belong to the Republicans or to the Democrats. Come on, somebody. Come on. I got licensed through the International Pentecostal Holiness Church, but I don't belong to them. I don't belong to them. This is a PH church, but we don't belong to them. Right? We belong to the Lord Jesus who paid his price. Amen. Paid the price for us. Amen. Hallelujah. If you have your Bibles, I want you to open with me to the book of 1 Kings chapter 20. 1 Kings chapter 20. This has really been stirred in my heart for many, many days, actually. And it's actually a passage that is, I don't know that I've ever really heard it preached on myself. And actually in 30 years, I don't ever remember preaching on it either. So I'm excited to preach something, or from a text anyway, that I haven't preached on in almost 30 years of preaching. But it makes me sound old when I say that. I should have said in the whole time I've told how many. Yeah, I mean, is when you measure it by decades and not by years, it sounds a whole lot worse. But I want to read just a few verses, and I want to really tell the story, the whole backstory, because there's some principles in it I think we can use in life, in battle, in warfare. Then the Lord has really stirred something in my heart toward the end, which is really what I want to look at. We've been praying and fasting, seeking the Lord over the last couple of weeks for different reasons, and I think mostly what I've got done is weeping and wailing and repenting because the Lord's been stirring some things in my heart. And some of this is the overflow of that. But I want you to look with me. 1 Kings chapter 20. And you may not understand these verses, but again, I will tell you about the backstory to it. In verse 39, 1 Kings 20, verse 39, a prophet has disguised himself, and he's going to talk to the king. The king, by the way, is King Ahab, who was not a godly king of Israel. But here's what it says, verse 39, 1 Kings 20. And as the king passed by, he, being the prophet that was in disguise, cried unto the king, and he said, Thy servant went out into the midst of the battle, and behold, a man turned aside and brought a man unto me, and said, Keep this man, or guard this man. If by any means he be missing, then shall thy life be for his life, or else thou shalt pay a talent of silver. In other words, either way, it's going to cost you. And as thy servant, watch what he said, and as thy servant was busy here and there, he was gone. And the king of Israel said unto him, So shall thy judgment be, thyself hast decided it. And he hasted and took the ashes away from his face. And the king of Israel discerned him that he was of the prophets. And he said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, because thou hast let go out of... So in other words, he's using this as an illustration to the king. You'll understand it later. But he said to the king that the Lord is saying to you, Ahab, because you let go out of your hand a man who the Lord appointed to utter destruction, therefore thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people. Verse 43 says, And the king of Israel went to his house heavy and displeased, and came to Samaria. Back in verse 39, he said, And as the king passed by, he cried to the king and said, Your servant went out in the midst of the battle, and behold, a man turned aside and brought a man unto me, a prisoner in other words, from the battle, and said, Keep or guard this man. And if by any means he is missing, then shall thy life be for his life, for you'll pay a talent of silver. And as the servant was busy here and there, he was gone. He ended up going missing. And the king of Israel said, so shall thy judgment be, thyself hast decided. I want to talk to you this morning just for a little while from the subject, don't let it escape. Don't let it escape. Turn to your neighbor and help me out and just tell them, don't let it escape. Don't let it escape. Now let me explain the backstory to this, and really I'm going to try to do this efficiently. Man, there's so much here. I told Winnie I was printing out my notes this morning, kept printing and printing and printing. And I said, as you can tell, I got a lot to say. But this chapter records the history of a war between Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, and Ahab, the king of Israel. Of course, between the Syrians and the Israelites, but those two were the kings. Ben-Hadad was the enemy king. Ahab was the Israelite king. Ahab was not a godly king, but God was going to use him, and God still, how many knows his grace and his mercy? Sometimes we may not understand, but man, I'm glad for his grace and his mercy, that even when we don't do right, God is still faithful, and he comes through, and he extends grace and mercy. So Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, had really gathered all his host against Israel. And the chapter tells us that he had formed an alliance of 32 other kings. 32 other people groups that he had formed to come up against Israel. And King Ben-Hadad, having done that, sent word to Ahab, the king of Israel, and essentially said, everything of value, listen to it carefully, does this not sound like our enemy? He said, everything of value that you have is going to be mine. Everything that you treasure, everything that you value is going to be mine. Your silver and your gold. Of course, Old Testament is outward and external. And of course, the New Testament is inward and spiritual and such. So he's saying everything that you have that's of value is going to be mine. Your silver, your gold. Then he said, your wives and your children, every good thing you have is going to be mine. That really does typify our enemy, right? Because Satan often wants to remove from you and I every good thing that God gives us. He does not want us to have any pleasure, any joy, any good thing. He does not like a smile on your face, and he does not like joy in your heart. And so he will come, that he will try to take every good thing that you have. And we know that those good things come from the Lord. For the Bible says in the book of James, every good and perfect gift is from above. It comes from the Father of lights, in whom there is no darkness and no variableness of turning. In other words, there's no shadow of darkness. There's nothing. He is pure light. He is not illuminated by light. He is light. And so it says there that every good and perfect gift comes from above. But how many knows this? That Satan, our enemy, the Bible calls him the devil, Satan, Lucifer, the old serpent, the dragon, all kinds of negative personas that he's presented in. Satan likes to threaten us. And Satan likes to paint pictures of negative possibilities in our lives, of things that we're going to lose out on. He loves, I've found this to be true, that he loves to sell to us if he can get us to buy, if he can get us to grab onto it, if he can put the bait out. He loves to hook us with certain scenarios where we end up lacking, where we end up deficient, where we end up undersupplied, where we end up on the bottom instead of the top, where we end up the tail instead of the head. He loves to paint those scenarios and do that. And he will try many times through intimidation. He can be intimidating in a doctor's office. He can be intimidating in a lawyer's office. He can be intimidating in a banker's office. Come on, he can be intimidating anywhere. He can be intimidating and trying to. And so Ben-Hadad had an alliance with 32 other kings with him. I know sometimes the enemy will try to stack the deck against you. The enemy will try to stack the deck. 32. So here a total of 33 kings and their armies and their hosts that's coming against the people of God. And the enemy will stack the deck to make it look like it is impossible for us to resist, for us to conquer, for us to slip out from under what he is trying to do, and for us to stuff. And then you meet somebody in the waiting room who's got or who had what you have been told you had. And then they'll tell you their poor, pitiful story of what all they went, and they'll try to stack the deck against you. Y'all ain't going to help me this morning, but I'm telling you, the enemy will try to intimidate you. But the Bible said that God has not given us a spirit of fear. That word fear is intimidation. He has not created us to operate in a spirit of intimidation, but He has given us the power of love and of a sound mind. And so what you need to understand is, though the enemy comes against you and tries to stack the deck, greater is He, the Bible said, that is in you than he that is in the world. And that if God be for us, nobody can be against us, for He that is in me is greater than he that is against me. He'll try to stack the deck, and that's what the enemy tried to do here in Ahab. The interesting thing is, Ahab, he was not a godly king. He was not known for submitting and surrendering to the Lord. But Ahab initially answered the threat when he said, everything that you have of value is mine. He said, your wives, your children, for all of it, he said, all of it is going to be mine. I read that, and Ahab looks back, and initially Ahab answered the threat and said, I'm yours. All that I have is yours. And I thought, God, why would He do that? And I remember, he's married to Jezebel. And if I was married to Jezebel, I'd look back at Benadad and say, when you want to pick her up? But what it shows us is that Ahab's resistance had been broken down. Ahab didn't care about defending. Ahab didn't care about doing war. Ahab didn't care about doing a battle initially. And he says back to Benadad, I am yours and all that I have is yours. And so, listen, that is a terrible, terrible response. Because in essence, Ahab was giving in to the threats of the enemy. And while we may not say it out loud like Ahab did, way too many of us, listen, way too many people have been too cooperative and yielding to the enemy and his threats. It may not have been bold and boisterous like Benadad. It may not have been something that came to us externally and we heard we got a letter in the mail, or we got an email, or we got a text message, or we saw a report. It may not come like that. Sometimes it's what He whispers when we're alone, laying on the bed, or sitting in the chair, or driving down the road, or taking a shower. And He'll whisper these things, these negativities to us. And many people are too cooperative and yielding to the enemy and his threat. What I found is that the enemy will say boo, people will say who, and you put them together, you got boo-hoo all the rest of your life. And that's what we end up doing. And we cry and we distress, not giving a resistance to what the enemy wants to do. And so like Benadad, the enemy, listen, when Ahab said that, you know what Benadad said? You know what, I'm going to take this further. I'm going to take this further. Because it's not just mine. He said, I'm going to send people down there and we're going to take it. In other words, before he was saying, hey, you might as well send them to it. He said, no, you know what we're going to do? We're going to come down there and we're going to get it. We're going to take it for ourselves. And so now what has happened is Benadad has fed off of Ahab's compliance. The enemy will feed off of your compliance. As long as you put up no resistance, he said, man, if they ain't going to put up a fight, I'm going to go further. If they're not going to resist that, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to take it to the next level. I'm going to take it up a notch. If they're not going to push back on that, then I'm going to take it to the next dimension. I'm going to take it to the next level. And that's why it's important for us, as I preached here a few weeks ago, to turn the battle at the gate, to not give him a foothold, to not give him space in our lives. Because have you ever heard the saying, if you give an inch, he'll take a mile? That's the way the enemy works. If you give him the Bible says in Ephesians 4:26, I believe it says, neither give place to the devil. No place. No place. Don't give him the inch. Don't give him the corner. Don't give him a seam. Don't give him an opening, because he'll slither in and he'll begin to widen it. And so Benadad sent back to Ahab and said, hey, you might as well enjoy what you got while you can, because by tomorrow this time, I'm going to be sending servants down to you, and they're going to be going through you. This is what he said. They'll be going out. This is Lincoln's translation, but it's really what he said. He said, they're going to be going through your house, and everything of value they find, they're going to be putting into their pockets, and they're going to be bringing it back to you. And he said, whatever is pleasant in your eyes, verse 6, whatever is pleasant in thine eyes, they shall put it in their hand and take it away. Give him an edge to take him out. And that's what's going on. Because the enemy is not content with just partial spoils from your life. He wants to absolutely plunder the people of God. He wants to absolutely take everything that is of worth, everything that is of value to you, anything that brings you joy. So complacency is not an option. We'll talk about it in a moment. King Ahab says to his servants, Ben-Hadad has sought mischief against us. Listen what he said. He said, Ben-Hadad has sought mischief against us, and I denied him not. What kind of leader, what kind of king? Look, we don't need you directing the army. We don't need you out front. Ben-Hadad, the enemy, has sought mischief, and I didn't deny him. I said, okay. The enemy threatened, and Ahab said, okay, listen, you and I need to learn to put up resistance against the enemy. I know things don't look good. I know the enemy has built an alliance. I know that he's gathered a lot of things against us. But you have to learn how to stand and push back and resist his advances against you. Man, so Ahab's here, he said, hey, he sought mischief and I denied him not. And the elders and the servants, those around Ahab, thank God for godly counsel around us. Even when we not in step, thank God for people around us who are in step. And elders and servants around Ahab said, do not listen to Ben-Hadad. Do not listen to him and do not consent to his proposal, they said. I was reading that this week and I thought, man, God, thank you for voices around us who will stop us and at least have us reevaluate decisions. If you don't have a voice around you or near you that will cause you to pause and reevaluate things, you're on dangerous ground. And so Ben-Hadad has said, hey, I'm going to take it all. Ahab said, okay, whatever you want. But the men around Ahab said, no, do not consent to his proposal. And so Ahab, though he didn't quite get all of it, he did send back to Ben-Hadad and said, okay, well, what you said at the first is fine, but this second notch that you've taken it to, no, I'm not good with it. I cannot accept this second demand of yours. Well, if you're not going to accept the second one, why are you accepting the first one? Come on, I'm glad that we finally get to a point and say we're going to step up and we're going to start resisting, but why not resist the whole thing? Why not resist the whole attempt, the whole attack? And so he said, what you required at the first I will do, but I cannot accept this last demand of yours. No. You don't give him anything. You don't give over anything. You do not yield to him at all, but instead of standing against the enemy and trusting God, Ahab, what he's done is he's tried to look at his ability. He's trying to look at his capacity. He's trying to figure his own way. He's gone into self-preservation mode. He's trying to say, okay, well, I might can resist a little bit, but I don't think I'm big enough, strong enough. I don't think there's enough of us that we can really say no to all of it. So he's trying to figure out how he can save face, but still make some compromises and concessions with the enemy. And Ben-Hadad hears what Ahab has said, and Ben-Hadad says, hey, I'm going to turn all of you to dust, to be blown away in the wind. And he said, and may our gods strike me and do more to me if I don't make it happen to you. In other words, hey, when I get through with you, this is what Ben-Hadad said, when I get through with you, there will be nothing left. And that's what the enemy is saying to somebody, even in this building. When I get through with you, when I get through with this situation, when this is all said and done, there will be nothing left. You're not going to have any joy, you're not going to have any peace, you're not going to have any contentment. And so Ben-Hadad has sent back, and finally we see some boldness kick into Ahab. And Ahab said, I love this. Ahab said in verse 11, he said, let not him that is putting on his armor talk like one who is taking off his armor. You know what he said? He's basically, when you put on armor, you're going to battle. when the battle's over, you take it off. And he said, you're talking like one who's taken off the armor, like the battle's already over, when you should be talking like one that's putting on. But in other words, Ahab sent back and said, hey, if that's your attitude, you ain't even seen me fight yet. You ain't even seen me throw a punch yet. In other words, he said, hey, you're talking like this thing's already over. We ain't even went to battle yet. You done got on my wrong side. I wish somebody here today, the enemy would get on your wrong side, that he would ruffle you enough to where you would start resisting and coming back against him instead of being a doormat and letting him take everything out of your life and push you around and do everything he wants to do. I wish you'd rise up and say, no, you're acting like one like this is already over. No, I ain't begun to fight. You want to fight, that's what we'll do. But you're not going to threaten me and talk to me like this thing is already over. No, you are in for a fight. I'm not accepting that. I'm not accepting that. I'm not giving you that. I'm not giving over that. You want to fight for it. You want it, you're going to have to fight for it, because I will not lay down and let you just waltz in here and take it. So Ahab sits back and he says, man, you're talking that not him that's putting on his armor, talk like one that's taking it off. He said, you're talking like you've already won and we hadn't even started fighting. You're talking like the battle's over and we ain't even got started. And I really believe this, is some of you, as you sit here, the enemy even right now is trying to whisper in your ear and say, oh, that applies to them, that applies to so-and-so. Oh, well, that would be right, but in your situation, it doesn't apply. In your situation, this is the way it's going to be. He's trying to whisper that you already lost, that you already conceded something, and that is irrecoverable, that you can't get it back. Like you're already defeated, like his victory is as good as won. And for some of you, you need to look back and say, hey, I haven't even started yet. I haven't even started. I have not taken my best step. Come on, I have not prayed my best prayer yet. I have not lived my best life yet. I have not put my best foot forward yet. I'm praying that before we leave this place, that a boldness and a militant spirit, spiritually militant spirit, would come on some of you, and you would rise up and tell the enemy that if it is a fight he wants, it is a fight that he's got. You need to learn how to push back against the enemy. So Benadad and his cohorts, get this, they're drinking, getting drunk, celebrating their victory before the battle's even been fought. And they get word of Ahab and Israel's resistance. And so, under this drunken stupor, Ben-Hadad tells everyone to set themselves in array against the city of Samaria, which is where Ahab and Israel was at. But a prophet of God comes to Ahab and says, now that you're going to fight, now that you've taken this stance of resistance, now that you're going to do that, now that you're standing up against the enemy, the Lord has a word for you. And Ahab's like, what does the Lord say? And the prophet said, the Lord said, now that you're going to put up resistance, this ought to stir you to put up some resistance. The Lord says unto you, now that you're going to fight, now that you decide to fight, now that you decide to push back, this is what he said. He said, the Lord said, he will deliver into your hands Ben-Hadad and the army of the Syrians. He said, in other words, that thing that's been coming against you, he will deliver this multitude into thy hand. Listen to what he said, and you shall know that I am the Lord. Not your enemy. He said, I'm trying to use these things, and sometimes I let things come against you to try to get you to raise up so I can prove to you who I am. I'll show you, and you shall know that I'm the Lord. In other words, if you will get militant and resist what the enemy is trying, God said, I will show up and I will prove to you who I really am. But I can't work with a complying spirit. I can only work with a resisting spirit. Not somebody's going to comply with the enemy, but somebody's going to resist the enemy. Come on, the Bible said, submit yourselves to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. Guess who makes him flee? It's not you. When you put up resistance, God shows up, come on, and runs that enemy out of town where you can walk and live in joy and peace. And I, for one, am tired. I, for one, am tired of the enemy having a soft spot, a comfort zone. I'm ready for him to be uncomfortable. I'm ready for him to know that if he comes around me, that he's going to have a fight on his hands. The Bible said that Ahab looked back at the prophet saying, but how's this going to happen? And the prophet said, I'm going to raise up the young men of the princes of the provinces. And they devised a plan, and Ahab said, yeah, but who's going to order the battle? In other words, he said, how's this whole thing going to come about? And the prophet said, you're going to do it. In essence, Ahab was asking, how's all this going to get started? And the prophet was saying, hey, you're going to attack. You're not going to sit around and wait for the enemy. You're going to attack. Okay. I'm one king, and they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. They got 32 other kings, and I'm going to attack it? Yeah. Because you're not going to deliver yourself. I'm going to deliver this multitude into your hand. And you are going to attack them. And so, in other words, there are times that we are not, as believers, supposed to be on the defensive. We are not always to be reactive and reflexive to the enemy. We are to be spiritually on offense. We're to launch the attack. Not necessarily pick a fight, but we already know what he's trying. And so here he is, and I want to move forward. Like I said, there's a lot in this, but they sent these young princes to Syria, and the young men began to prevail against the enemy, and as a result, the Syrians began to flee. The Syrians began to run. Israel pursued all of them, but listen, the Bible said that Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, got free. He escaped. Nonetheless, there was a great slaughter of the Syrians. The Bible said even their horses and their chariots, a great victory was wrought that day. But after, listen to me carefully. After that battle was over, God delivered them. He brought them into victory. But after that battle was over, you hear me very well, the prophet came back to Ahab and said, what you need to do, now that you've won, listen, this is so good. This is so good. He said, now that you have won this victory, what you need to do is strengthen your position and see what anything that needs to be tended to. Here's what he said. Because there was coming another season when that king of Syria is going to attack you again. In other words, hey, you won a great victory. God came through for you. But don't be at ease and don't rest. Use this time to strengthen your position, right? Because that enemy is going to be back. You see, Satan fights seasonally. When Jesus was in the garden, or when he was in the wilderness, being tempted at the beginning of his ministry, the Bible said at the end of that, I believe it's in the book of Luke, it says, after he resisted all the temptations, after he pushed back and shown resistance, the Bible said this, and the devil leaveth him for a season. But how many knows that enemy kept coming back? And back, not in the same way, not in the same form, but he kept coming back, and he kept coming back, and he kept coming back. And so here's what I believe the Lord is saying to us. I believe the Lord is saying that if you are currently experiencing some reprieve from spiritual attack, you don't have a lot of stuff going on in your life right now, don't get comfortable. If you are not under attack, here's what you do. Strengthen your position. Make sure that you got everything dealt with that needs to be dealt with. If a chariot has a broken wheel, you need to fix it. You need to armor stuff up again. You need to get equipped again. Fix any holes in the armor that you times. You don't use those times to strengthen your position. He said when he comes back, he's going to find those weak links, those weak places, and that's what he's going to go for. Man, that's solid. That is great, solid advice. And you know why we need it? Because by nature, we don't do that. By nature, we think, man, that's took care of it. Man, that's over. I can just sit back and no. Ain't no sitting back and relaxing. Yes, you can rest in the Lord, but you got to make sure that you're ready because the enemy can come at any time. So he will work to make you think that something is, listen, he will work to make you think something is over when all he's done is push pause. And he'll try to come back. And so he'll take time to strategize and calculate his next move against you. So in the meantime of all this happening with Ahab, Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, began to regroup. And some of the advisors in Israel some of Ben-Hadad's advisors said of the Israelites, this is what they said. He said, their God is a God of the mountains and the hills. But their God is not the God of the valley. The reason they overcame us, the reason that they was victorious was because we did this on the mountains. If we get them in the, listen what they said, if we get them in the valleys, we can prevail over them. That is the enemy's strategy. He says, hey, if I go to them when they're on the mountaintop and they're full of strength and joy and power, and I try to do, we can't do it. But if we can get them in a valley, if we can get them in the valley, if we can get them in that slope, if we can get them in that low place, come on. They said if we can get the people of God in a valley, because if they're on the mountain, their God is mighty, but get them in a valley. And this is what they said, not in fear. They said, get them in the valley, and their God is not nearly as strong. But I got news for the devil. My God is God everywhere. My God is God all the time. My God is God in the mountain and in the valley. He's God in the day and He's God in the night. He's God when it looks good and He's God when it looks bad. He's God when I got joy. He's God when I'm sad. He's God when I got gladness. He's God when I'm grieving. He's God when I have, come on somebody, He is God all the time. You can pick me on the mountain, you can get me in the valley, you can get me in the sunshine, you can get me in the rain. But the God I serve is the God I serve. And He's the same yesterday and today and forever. So your strategy of trying to get me in the valley is not going to work. Because I got nothing close to me. But the God I serve, He is able and He's with me and He never leaves me and He never forsakes me. He's always God. He's always God. He's always God. Always God. He's God all the time. He's God everywhere. So in their assessment was inaccurate, but it was offensive to the Lord. They said their God is a God of the mountains, but not of the valleys. And God's like, oh yeah. Oh really? And so it offended God. Sometimes Ahab was not a godly king, but sometimes it's not about your faith and your power and your insight and your wisdom and your connection with God. Sometimes the enemy offends God. And God said, you know what? I didn't like what you said, and just for that, I'm going to give somebody victory that don't even deserve it. They tripped and they stumbled and they've fallen and come on, don't think that you got to be perfect for God to come through for you. I'm not saying go out and willingly do stuff wrong and think that God's always going to rescue you. But I am telling you that God is a God of grace and He's a God of mercy. And even when I've fallen, He still comes through for me. Even when I stumble, I didn't stumble away from Him. I stumbled into His hand and He still held me and He still held me. And so he says there, he said, because the enemy said that God is only a God of the hills, here's what the Lord said, the Lord is going to deliver them into your hand. And again, they had a 7-day standoff. How much time I got? A 7-day standoff. They engaged in battle after that 7-day standoff. And the children of Israel, the Bible says, slew 100,000 footmen in one day. 100,000 footmen in one day. No bombs, no H bomb except the Holy Spirit bomb. It wasn't H bomb, it was HS bomb. Holy Spirit bomb. The Bible said that the remnant fled to a nearby city. The remnant of the Syrians fled to a nearby city, and they thought they were saved. He said, oh, you think I'm the only God of the country, not the city? He said, okay. They got back to the city. You know what God did? The city walls fell and killed 27,000 of them. Ahab, during this time that God was delivering, Ahab had the chance to take Ben-Hadad into custody and to kill him, where he never had to deal with this again. Ahab had the chance to slay Ben-Hadad, to absolutely be done with the enemy that had tormented him. But Ahab, faulty as he was, enters into a deal with Ben-Hadad and allows him to live. And the Bible said that this thing displeased the Lord. You got to watch me sometimes, because I can shift gears in my heartbeat. So I'm warning you. I wonder how many things we've let live that the Lord wanted us to slay. I wonder how many things are still alive and well that the Lord wanted us to be done with 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I wonder how many things we are allowing to roam free in our lives that the Lord has given us power to subdue. Now, I'm not even talking about externally. Just look inward, not outwardly. Let's look inwardly. What about the things inside of us that the Lord doesn't want living, and the things He's given us power to bring into subjection? You know, like our temper. I love the sound. I love the sound of sacred cows toppling over. What about our anger? What about our lust? Covetousness? What about jealousy? What about judgmentalism? What about ego? What about ego and pride? What about a bad habit or an addiction? How about that spiritual complacency that just keeps coming back and back and back? And God's given us the power to subdue that. Put that thing away. Just keep letting it live. And we give. How many things? Because the Bible said that Ahab entered into a treaty with Ben-Hadad to let him live. Ben-Hadad made all kinds of promises. Hey, the land and all the goods that my father took from your fathers, I'm going to restore it back to you. I'm sorry, devil, but I found that you're a liar. And I can't trust anything you said. And so when the enemy tells you, oh, this little old thing, well, you know, your daddy had a temper, and your granddaddy had a temper. Of course you don't have a temper. That's what I'll tell you. Well, everybody's got a little jealousy. They might do it, but that don't mean it's right. It don't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it should exist in any of us. And so he entered into this ungodly treaty, and I wonder, and I told you, been praying and seeking the Lord the last couple weeks, and I think more than anything else, I just got done a lot of weeping, wailing, and repenting. Because there's things that God began to do with me about it. And so how many things have we reached an ungodly agreement with and allowed to coexist in our hearts and lives that really should have been gone a long time ago? Jesus was preaching. And you know how we liberate those things? Here's how we do it. We liberate them in our lives through lies that we tell ourselves. We liberate them. We give them freedom through lies that we tell ourselves. We set it free through excuses that we make to have its presence in our life. This ain't really hurting anybody. I'm not really hurting anybody. This is not really hurting. I mean, God, are you saying this is holding me back? What if it is? What if it is? Are you going to go by your agreement? I mean, you already seen Benadad Ahab. You already seen that he doesn't take no for an answer. He comes back. Come back. And then he'll come back. And there's some things we keep trying to say no, that we keep trying to enter this agreement with and just kind of push all this out. And God says, I've given you the power to do it. Put it under your feet once and for all. And God sends an unnamed prophet who's about to use an object lesson to teach Ahab an important truth. And all that was my introduction. This is my message. Okay. All that is the backstory. A prophet, unnamed prophet, asks someone to smite him. There's a very interesting occurrence that occurs there. You can read this chapter later today, okay? You get the full sense of it, okay? But he said he needs somebody to smite. He said, I need somebody that will wound me. And it had to have been a word from God, because one man did not wound him, did not smite him, and the Bible said that he was destroyed by lion, because he would not comply with the word of the prophet. I don't even have time to talk about that, for our adversary walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. You start not complying with God, you open up yourself to stuff that you didn't ask for. But he finds somebody that will wound him, and he smites him, and the Bible says that he wounded him, and he disguises himself. And the King James Version says he puts ashes on it. And while I understand why they would have done that, the word ashes there in the Hebrew really is a word that means covering, and many commentators believe that he put bandages. It could have been a combination of putting ash on his face and a bandage, because either way, the king, it was supposed to be a disguise so the king wouldn't recognize him as the prophet. So however you want to look at it, I'm not going to debate it. He was unrecognizable by the king to begin with. And the prophet is disguised, and he waits for the king to come by. And watch this. He waits for the king to come by. Okay? And when the king comes by, not knowing that it is the prophet, he hears the prophet say, "O king, I was brought into the thick of battle. And there was a man while the battle was going on, there was a man that brought another man to me, a prisoner, if you will. And he told me, guard this man. I need you to guard this man. I need you to keep this man. And do not let him escape." And he said to me, "O king, if by any means he ends up missing, it will be your life for his. For you'll pay a talent of silver." In other words, it's going to cost me either way. And then he says this, "O king, while your servant," look at this, "while your servant was busy here and there, I came back, he was gone. And the king of Israel, Ahab, says back to this man that he doesn't know as the prophet, he said, so shall your judgment be. You yourself have already decided it." In other words, King Ahab said, hey, then you've already chosen your own judgment. It's going to cost you for letting him escape. And then, of course, the prophet takes the disguise off, and he looks back at the king and says, this is what the Lord says to you. Ben-Hadad was brought under your subjection, and you let him go, and now you will pay for it with your life. Now, I want you to hear what the Lord is saying to us. The king's words were this: when something adversarial to your spiritual safety, to your spiritual well-being, to your spiritual progress When something detrimental and adversarial to that has been brought under control or subjection, and God has delivered it into your hand, this is what he says. When that has happened, and you allow that thing to keep rising back up, and you let it walk freely in your life, here's what the Bible says it's going to cost you. He said, get your temper under control, and you let it keep living. Guess what? It's going to cost you. That lust, that coveting, that jealousy, whatever it is. He said, get it under control. And it still is going to cost you. That it may not cost you everything, but it's going to cost you. It'll cost you. Your anger will cost you. Your lust will cost you. Your pride will cost you. Your jealousy will cost you. I don't care what the enemy tries to tell you and how he tries to tell you and convince you it's okay. Your addiction will cost you. Your pet sin will cost you. Because anything that should be subdued in our life, that the Lord has charged us and said, here it is. Here it is. I've given you the power to overcome it. I've given you the power to keep it subdued. I've given you the power to keep it in check. Do not. It's up to you. God has brought it under subjection. God has given us the power. But he said it's up to you. I give you charge of it. Do not let it escape. Don't let it free. Don't let it loose. Don't give it any place. Make sure that you keep what I brought into subjection. Make sure you keep it. Amen. And here's a strong word, but I believe it's an accurate word. I sense the Lord saying this to me. I'll just tell you that he said this to me. This week, he said this to me. He said, son, you're a lot better. You're a lot better at confessing than you are repenting. Bro, he said, you are a lot better at confessing than you are repenting. I was like, oh. Let me explain. See, confession is the acknowledgement of a wrongdoing. And of course, there can be positive confessions too. We confess that Jesus is Lord. We confess that we believe in Him like we did in that song. But confession in this sense, talking about sin, confession is an acknowledgement or an admission of sin. Yes, Lord, I did wrong. Yes, Lord, I confess. And we should confess. Confession is only a part of it, though. We must acknowledge and admit. We must recognize and say, yes, we did it. But repentance is not a prayer. Repentance is not a prayer. Confession is a prayer. Repentance is a behavior. You hear me? Confession is an event. Repentance is a process. Confession is I acknowledge it, I admit it. Repentance is coming to terms that I can't do that anymore, and I literally turn my mind, I turn my thoughts, I turn my ideal, I turn the way I view it, and I turn to where it turns my behavior. That's repentance. And the Lord said to me, you're a lot better at confessing than you are repenting. And I say, God, you gotta help get this down in my heart. And He took me to that verse that we all know so well, 2 Chronicles 7:14. He says, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face, watch this, and confess, no, and turn. He said, I don't want you to just acknowledge it. I don't want you to just admit it. I want you to turn. In other words, he said, I want you to quit. Quit. He said, I want you to turn from it. Man, we're a lot better. Me first, we're a lot better at confessing than we are at repenting. I can tell you this, confession is not the key to revival. Repenting we need to have under subjection. Yes, I confess my lust. I confess my jealousy. I confess my covetousness. I confess my anger. I confess my death. That's not what he wants. That's great, but it can't stop there. He said, you got to turn. You got to turn. You got to change. And he says, here's the thing. Repentance is allowing God to bring those things under subjection, and we keep them under subjection. And we don't let it escape. And I'm afraid that way more times than we care to admit that we've done what Hebrews 2 speaks about, and we have let some things slip. The prophet said that, here's what he said. I don't have time to preach all this. But the prophet said to the king in this object lesson that he's giving, he said this. He said, while I was busy here and there, the man got away. You know what he's saying? He said, hey, I got busy. I got distracted. I had other things I needed to do. And I had other things I needed to focus on. And he said, notice what he said. He said, this is not a rebellious thing. I don't want you to be condemned this morning. He said, this is not a rebellious thing. This is not an intentional thing. He said, but it occurs in the busyness of life. He said, I got busy here and there, and when I look back, he was gone. He was free. And how many knows, especially in the 21st century, life is often busy, fast-paced, full of activity, and we can very easily get distracted. Busy here and busy there. This has to be done. That has to be done. This is a necessity. That's a necessity. And days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months, and months turn into years. And before you know it, we got a whole army of stuff that's loose. And our focus on what matters most gets lost in the cares of the day. Start slow, but you lose focus on what you're supposed to do. When you get this, what you're supposed to guard with your life. He said, if you let this escape, it is your life for his life. So you want jealousy to live. You're willing to give your life up so your jealousy can live. You're willing to give your life, your spiritual life, just so your temper can live, so you can give people a piece of your mind. Listen, some of y'all ain't got much better. Keep on. In other words, he's saying, hey, listen. He's saying you are to guard this with everything within you. Starts off smart, gradually, a little bit more. The drift starts to pick up steam. Because you get in the current of this world, man, you can be separated from spiritual things in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Man, that's so much I want to do. Let me give you this. In Mark chapter 4, remember the parable of the sower and the seed and the soils? I've seen that this week in a new light. Now, if you've seen it this way before, bless your heart, you should have told me. But I've seen it in a new light, because I've always preached that you know, some people's got a stony heart, some people's got a thorny heart, some people's got a shallow heart, some people's got a wayside heart. The enemy just comes immediately, steals the word. And then some people's got a good ground heart, you know. And even in that, some people got 30-fold hearts, some got 60-fold hearts. But I've seen it different this week. I began to understand that those different soils, they don't represent different people. They represent different parts of my heart. Because there's some things, some word, the seed, there's some word I'm ready for. But there's other word that God can tell me, and the enemy can come and take it away. Let me help you out. This means yes. This means no. This is the time for yes. There's other times. Come on. You call me out and tell me that God's got a big dream for me and big things for me, and I'm ready. But you call me out and tell me that I need to be broken in the power of my pride. I'm not quite as ready. I got a stony heart or a shallow heart. And the Bible said that one of the types of soils, one of the things that happens is that the seed is sown, and it's not anything wrong. That's the things around it. The thorns begin to grow up and choke it out. And those thorns, you know what he said, are the cares of this life, the deceitfulness of riches, and the lust for other things. Man, we get so caught up in stuff. We don't let the Word live in us. So there's some Word, thank God, that's living good, producing good in my heart. But there's other things that just like, man, I just can't get. Why? Because those are different parts of my heart. And I'm not going to debate with you, argue with you if you don't agree. I just begin to see where, man, maybe this is not good to say as your pastor, but I'm going to tell you, I found out, and might as well be honest about it, because you probably know it. I know God knows it, but you probably, there's some areas of my heart that's shallow. I'm going to shock y'all. I ain't perfect. I know, right? I mean, I'm still in progress. I'm still a work in progress. There's some areas in me where it seems like the word will spring up and it's gone. Where'd it go? And I have to keep replanting and replanting and replanting. It's a work in progress. But this story in 1 Kings, I got to put this story in 1 Kings as a reminder. There are certain things that we're to safeguard and keep secure. You see, here's the thing. If you don't hear anything that I've said, please hear this. You see, one day the king is going to come back. One day the king is going to come back. And when he does, he's going to ask how well we safeguarded those things that he gave us power to subdue. And if I guarded it, he's going to ask, Keith, did you guard this with your life? Did you make this a priority? And I want to be able to look back, King, and say, I kept the things. See, I'm confident that he can keep what I've committed to him. But I want him to have confidence and be able to come back to me and say, hey, I have kept things subdued and secure that you placed in my charge. So how do we fix it? Here's how we fix it. I want you to stand with me. Y'all stand and keep preaching. Y'all stand, I'll probably keep preaching anyway. How do we fix it? Here's how we start fixing it. It's a process. Here's how we start fixing it. You got to get back to putting Jesus at the center. Very center. Very, very center.